Okay. Hi everyone, it's Taylor and welcome back to my channel. I am so excited to be hosting an incredibly interesting discussion with you all. I have Steve from the Lawn Gnome here, and this whole thing is actually his idea, so I'm going to give him credit where it's totally due. So we're going to be discussing Sidney Lumet's 1976 classic Network. Steve, before we begin, can you just give us a quick overview of who you are and what your channel is about?
Well, I certainly can do that, but Taylor, I can't take all the credit for this because I was just trying to do this as an incentive to help you continue on with your movie discussions because I had so much fun working with you, talking about Vertigo. I was like, we got to do more of these because we just have too much fun. You know, that's the most important thing.
I'm going to get you to watch through your window. That is my goal.
I am not resisting that one. I will let you know that right now. But anyway, hi everybody. My name is Steve. My channel is The Lawn Gnome. Normally, I would say that I usually discuss new movies, music, and other kinds of pop culture. But due to the fact that I can't go to the theaters right now, I'm trying to find so many different ways to really fill that void that my channel has had. But thanks to people like Taylor, I've been able to connect with so many community members and do so many more pop culture content on my channel. And I'm actually kind of excited because I'm going to be getting a double dose of working with Taylor this weekend because we'll be working tomorrow on another video with our friend Cameron over at the Wild Book Garden. And I am so excited for that as well.
Oh, for sure. I am really pumped for both of these discussions.
For sure.
So before we get into our discussion, I wanted to give like a really quick summary of Network. So written by Patty Chayefsky, and I'm sorry if I butchered that name, and directed by Sidney Lumet, Network follows a failing television network, UBS, as they slowly make the switch from straightforward news to infotainment. After one of the reporters, Howard Beale, has a breakdown on air and announces that he is planning to kill himself live. Instead of getting him the help that he needs, they decide to capitalize on his ravings because they are getting the network an increase in ratings. That's a very basic summary. There's clearly a lot more at play here, but why don't we talk about the film more in depth? Yeah, so Steve, I don't know if you want to start with characters or dive more into the message, or what do you want to start with?
Well, I guess I'll start with how I discovered the movie first. I mean, I think that's the best place to start because clearly this was one that I was telling you, like, oh, you have to see this movie. And the reason why I was constantly throwing this movie out for Taylor to watch is because of the fact that even though Taylor and I have great discussions about popular culture, we also have very awesome political discussions. And when I did my great film throwback segment on my channel, which started so many years ago, almost, I believe 5 years ago now, Network was one of those movies that I always knew was one of those great movies that one day I need to see this movie. After seeing this movie, I have no idea how Rocky won Best Picture in 1976. Sorry to all you Rocky fans out there. Unfortunately, it's not my cup of tea, though I do enjoy a great sports underdog story. Unfortunately, the first Rocky just doesn't work for me, but you got a great director in Sidney Lumet. This movie was not just a beautiful piece of cinema, at least in my opinion. As someone who has been really watching the news a lot in the last couple of years, because I have a wife who believes that watching the news every day is very important because you have to know what's going on in the world. And even though there are many people out there that these days say no news is good news, I still feel it's important to know what's going on. And after seeing Network, I was so shocked at how a movie that came out in the late 1970s sort of foreshadowed a little bit as to what's been going on, especially in recent years with the 24-hour news networks in particular, not the local news stations, but the real 24-hour news networks. And it was quite mind-blowing to me. And that is why I had to suggest this movie to so many people. And that's basically my take on this film after I watched it.
Yeah. So this is an entirely new film to me. I hadn't heard of it until you suggested it, Steve, and then it popped up on a CNN Movies documentary that I have been binge watching, which if you have Hulu, CNN The Movies, fantastic documentary. But they were discussing Network, and I thought it was really interesting. And it was one of those films that I saw and I wasn't sure what to think about it at first. But as I was like writing down my notes and thinking on it more, there was something about it that kept sticking with me, and the idea of infotainment, which I really loved. I also loved Faye Dunaway in this movie. Excellent villain. I was telling Steve that the 70s had really great female villains, and I love that.
Oh, yeah. Well, you know, obviously, after the golden age of film pretty much ended in I always say that the magical year of film and cinema is 1967, because in that one year, we got such interesting films that really started to push the bar. We had movies like The Graduate, Guess Who's Coming to Dinner. I believe we also had In the Heat of the Night. So we had so many interesting films that started to really show us diverse characters, strong people of color, strong female characters as well. And it really spilled out into the 1970s. Even with the birth of a blockbuster, movies were really starting to become much bigger than what they used to be. Not that there's anything wrong with watching a great film from the 1940s or 50s or 60s, but the 70s definitely was a very interesting time for creativity and messages as well. And that's why Network really stood out there. I mean, it got tons of Oscar nominations. It won a great deal of Oscars. But yeah, I agree with you about Faye Dunaway. In regards to the actors as a whole, I think it's probably one of the most dynamic casts in film. No one character's personality is the same. And that's what I love so much about the characters.
Yeah. Howard Beale was an interesting one. And he's part of the reason why my opinion on the film started to shift more to the positive. Because it's not as much what he did as far as what he represents and how the network treated him. He is a man who clearly needs professional help. And the fact that they exploited him for ratings, it wasn't until I was thinking on it that I realized one of my local news stations back before I moved did the exact same thing to a reporter who needed help.
Wow.
Yeah, I won't go into too many details, but a popular local news reporter died under very scandalous and tragic circumstances. And he had a wife and daughter, and the news station that he worked on kept reporting on it over and over and over again like it was some sort of scandal. And part of me was kind of like, they're doing it because of the ratings. The way he died was just so odd and scandalous and not conventional that they know people are going to watch it.
Right. Yeah. And also, yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, but what you were saying is, yeah, Peter Finch gave us such an amazing performance as Howard Beale. I may be wrong about this, but I believe he was the very first actor to ever get a posthumous Oscar, because unfortunately he passed away before the Oscar ceremonies.
I read that.
Yes, and of course, you know, it was kind of funny because I knew about that character for years, because I still remember these commercials when I was a kid where the scene where he tells the audience to get up out of their chairs and run to the window and yell that famous line, "I'm as mad as hell and I'm not going to take this anymore." But yeah, you're absolutely right. The exploitation of his character for the sake of, even though they knew that there was something wrong with him mentally. I mean, I know that his good friend in the film, Max Schumacher, who was played by William Holden, and the fact that he knows that he's such a good friend of his and how resistant he was on having them exploit him. And also, it's kind of funny when you take a look at what had been going on in real news. I mean, look at what happened in 2016 with Megyn Kelly and the whole issue that happened with her when she did when she hosted the debate with Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton, and how the news kind of exploited her to a certain degree as well. So, like I said, it's so weird how things sort of like foreshadowed, and how these 24-hour news networks can really not really focus on the well-being of a person.
Exactly. Or the well-being of people as a whole. There's, you know, they're manipulating Howard Beale, but they're also manipulating their audience in a way.
Yeah, exactly.
What they want to see and not what they need to see.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that I get sort of angry about. I mean, one of my things that I personally like to do, especially when it comes to political news, is I personally want to make sure that I get to see both sides. Like, I actually constantly channel flip between Fox News and CNN, focusing on one specific story. And it is quite interesting to see how each view takes that one story. Although, in very, very recent days, both sides of the coin are actually starting to work in sync, because that whole thing that happened when the president talked about using detergents or injections, believe me, even the conservative people think, President Trump, you made a boo-boo there. Sorry.
Yeah, at that point on Fox News, it's like,
no.
Shut up.
They were like, no. Oopsie time. That's what happened there. But yeah, I mean, like, the fact that they take Howard Beale's news segment and they turn it into something like, To Tell the Truth, like a game show. It's so sad, even though at certain points in time, because of the fact that Howard Beale's mind, based on what you see through the film, is so far gone, even he doesn't even realize what's wrong with him, because he's like, I have a job now. I'm happy. I don't care what I say on television. They're going to watch me. They're going to love me. And it's like, no, this man needs help. You shouldn't be exploiting him like this.
Exactly. And at the end of the day, he's disposable. Just like all of the reporters and all the people on television are disposable. They're nothing but ratings.
Yeah, exactly. And you definitely, thanks to the pandemic, we definitely have seen how disposable some of these people really can be. It's kind of scary.
Yeah. So yeah, we're talking a little bit about infotainment, influential voices. So I don't know if we want to switch to characters or just keep on talking with this sort of track that we've gone on.
Well, clearly we talked a little bit about Howard Beale, so why don't we go into some more of the cast members? I mean, obviously, Faye Dunaway.
Yes.
The Oscar winner.
Excellent. Absolutely loved her performance. Fantastic. I really do like her as a sort of symbol of where television is going. Because I was going to say, she's all about numbers. She's all about ratings and numbers and what's going to make us the most money, and everyone else is disposable.
Yeah. And I think I told you this before, but what's kind of funny was I always knew who Faye Dunaway was. I mean, look, I had seen so many movies, but I knew that there were so many movies throughout time that I had to see at some point in time. But I knew even the actors and actresses that I never saw in a film, I knew who they were. So Faye Dunaway was a name that I knew. But Network was the very first time I ever actually watched her in a film. And ironically, no less than 2 years after that, I saw 2 more films that she was in. I saw her with Jack Nicholson in Chinatown from '74, which is also a fantastic noir film. I love that film. And her working alongside, the name that pretty much goes to her, which is Warren Beatty, because it's Bonnie and Clyde, the two of them together in a film as well. And very, very great performance from her in Network, though, because she was also a symbol of female empowerment at the time. Because at this point in time in the late 1970s, women were really starting to be predominant in the workforce, basically saying, I can play along with the boys pretty much and really show their stuff and even be very intimidating at times. And Faye Dunaway's performance is no surprise. But you're absolutely right. She plays a very strong antagonist because she's living in the 1970s, the late 1970s, when the economy is in dire straits. It's terrible. And she knows money talks and BS walks. So we're going to do everything that we can to get our ratings up so we can all be filthy rich. She throws emotions aside. She doesn't care about the feelings of people. And especially how the rest of the cast pretty much bounces off her character. I mean, I believe she never actually encounters Howard Beale in person throughout the film at all. I don't think they're ever in the same room together.
You pointed that out to me. Yeah.
Yeah, she always is alongside she's pretty much with Max Schumacher most of the time, and also Robert Duvall's character.
Right.
And what's so interesting about Robert Duvall's character is the fact that he is on the side of Schumacher at the beginning, saying, do not exploit Howard Beale. He's a hurting man. But when Faye Dunaway gets in his ear and say, think about all the ratings, think about all the money, and the extremes that she goes to are just crazy. The fact that she actually gets on the horn with a terrorist group and turns them into the movie of the week, that is like
exactly.
The craziest thing is not the fact that she did it. The craziest thing is the fact that it worked. That was the scary part.
And also one of the funniest scenes, in my opinion, is when they're like signing the contracts in the basement. Yeah. And they were based off of the group that kidnapped Patty Hearst.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
That was really interesting too. And just the way she was focused on exploiting like political views and obviously Howard Beale and not really caring. For most of the film, she's apolitical.
Mm-hmm.
She's
exactly.
Yeah. It would be one thing. Yeah. There's no real, I guess, goal to putting that Ecumenical Liberation Society on TV other than that it's going to get her ratings. It's not, here's their side of the story, or we're going to have a debate. It's all about money.
Now, the only color flag that she's flying is the color green in that entire film. Mm-hmm. That's the color of money, everybody, and that's really all she cares about. I mean, that scene where she actually wins that award and you can just see the glee in her eyes that she's like, I've made it. But and then she actually just wants to keep putting her foot on the gas and she just wants to take things even further. I mean, the ending of that film, you know, it's kind of funny that at the end of the movie, we all see what happens to Howard Beale. And the funny thing about that is the fact that we all forgot that that was his intention at the beginning of the film.
Yeah, exactly. And something I loved about it was just the ending. The ending is fantastic. And how the camera zooms in on him dead, like they're trying to get the shot, and like the commercials playing over it. Because at the end of the day, it is all about money. And they're going to play those commercials over it.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, like, it's sick and twisted at the same time. But again, you know, I'm not necessarily saying that that's something that people in the world of news have done in the real world. But it just shows you how important the capitalistic attitude is, especially in this country. I mean, but then again, when you take a look at news all around the world, like when you take a look at, I mean, I don't mean to offend anybody when I throw out countries, especially in this stage of the game, like China, which is a communist country. It's a different kind of extreme there. It's basically say everything the government tells you to say, or something bad is going to happen to you because you chose not to follow the rules of the status quo. So it's kind of funny because when you take a look at news from a capitalistic standpoint and from a communist/socialist standpoint, you really have to say to yourself, what's the lesser of two evils here? It's kind of scary.
See, that's the funny thing, though, about this film, because I am not a capitalist by any means. I don't know enough about economics to like say for sure that I'm a socialist, but I am not a capitalist. But this film, I feel like, is beloved by two sides, because I told you about that podcast that had the network clip in the beginning.
Yes.
It's a leftist podcast. They are very far left, and they love network. Mm-hmm. It's very interesting because I think it's something that both sides of the political spectrum want to see. They want news delivered to them, no BS. And I don't think they're getting it.
Yeah, and it's also kind of funny because I said to you a couple of days ago that the other day when I was actually watching one of the shows on Fox News and they were talking about the protests that were going on throughout the country, a lot of the people who were taking the story mentioned it's like what Howard Beale said, we're as mad as hell and we're not going to take it anymore. So you're absolutely right. The fact that this movie was so impactful that every mindset takes something away from it, that just shows you you've made a great movie. When so many people from different ways of mindset can take your film and interpret it to something that appeals and something that they truly believe in. That's power. That's power.
Exactly. I agree. And I think that's one of the things that I really liked about it, because the message was not, like I said, it's not one side or the other. It's something that I think everyone wants, which is we want to know the truth. We want to know what's going on. No BS. And so it was just a really nice surprise to like hear that little sound bite in one of my favorite podcasts.
Yeah, and one of the other things that I was thinking about, because I was saying to myself, is there anything negative that I can really talk about in regards to this film? And I was actually going to focus on the relationship that Faye Dunaway's character and William Holden's character have, because the truth is, when you take a look at that film, especially if you watch it for the first time, or even if you're just watching it for the sake of watching it, that is like the one thing in the film that doesn't necessarily fit in there. However, I let that idea stew a little bit. As a matter of fact, it's extremely important to this film.
I agree with you.
Because the point of that is to really show that Faye Dunaway's character has basically become an emotionless demagogue, because all she cares about at the end is like her true humanity has been lost because of the greed and the power that she has gotten because of what she had done for the news station throughout the entire film. That real life relationships, things that make me happy, those things don't make me happy anymore. What makes me happy? Me getting compliments, me getting the ratings up for my station, me making a difference, me making money. That's what she cares about at the end of the day. And that's where the relationship that she creates, because again, she knew that Max was married and she didn't care.
Yeah. So I was watching this film in the living room, and my roommate came in and we were sitting, and the part where she first comes on to Max, we were both like, oh, gross, ew, he's so old, no. But once you step away from the gross factor, what I find really interesting about the relationship is that she's clearly a symbol of where media is going.
Yeah.
And Max is more old school media. Like, we're giving you the straight facts. So him being temporarily seduced by Diane is sort of him sort of falling into that trap a bit. And once he realizes there's no love or empathy or anything down that path, that's when he decides to leave.
Yeah, unfortunately, we have no idea when the next incarnation of Walter Cronkite is coming, because until that day actually shows up, we're not going to have one of those faces on the television that really is there for the sake of spreading the facts. I mean, I talked to my wife about this topic a lot, because she doesn't like the 24-hour news networks because of all the things that we're talking about here. She would rather just listen to the local news, regardless of its NBC, ABC, even just the regular local Fox television network. You're not going to get the bias. You're not going to get the opinion pieces. You're going to get, here's what's going on in your world today. Like the great Ron Burgundy once said in Anchorman, you're just going to get what's going on. You're going to get your local stories. You're going to get your international and your national stories. And then you're going to get your sports, entertainment, and weather. That's the news. And that's why we are just trying to find one of those faces that we used to have, like a Ted Koppel. And that's, like a Ted Koppel. We have not had a Ted Koppel in a very long time. And, or Diane Sawyer, or, oh my God, how many other famous anchors can I think about? I don't know, maybe Cokie Roberts, or the one that I cannot, Connie Chung. That's what I'm thinking about, Connie Chung.
Oh, yeah.
Those famous anchors that did a lot of the local news that we love. I mean, heck, I'll even throw Katie Couric in there.
Yeah, local news is usually what my mom watches to get like all of the world news. She does get overwhelmed sometimes and will turn off political news if it's too much, but for the most part, that's where she gets her news. My dad is more of he used to watch Fox News, but in the wake of recent political events, he's switched over to MSNBC and CNN now. But the 24-hour news cycle, I think, is interesting because I think nowadays you have enough news to fill a 24-hour news cycle, but a lot of times there aren't. So you have to switch to these weird sort of like variety shows, for lack of a better term. Like with the Howard Beale show, you've got him being basically a televangelist. Then you've got the the psychic? And the psychic. And you have to constantly find entertainment with a 24-hour news cycle, whereas local news, it's what, 4 or 5 hours a day?
Yeah, something like that. And I think one of the most impactful scenes in that film is, once again, something that sort of really foreshadowed what's going on right now, especially when it comes to the 24-hour news networks. The fact that a single voice that people truly rely on, the fact that people will actually follow the voice. You know, when he says, I'm as mad as hell, I'm not going to take it anymore, all those people in New York City opened up their windows and said that. And that's what's kind of scary when we take a look at people who watch extremely liberal news or extremely conservative news, or even somewhere in between. Most likely, if you're in the center, you're pretty much going to be a person that still has a brain in their head. But when you go to the extremes, it is so crazy what people will believe. I mean, I still think that one of the most outrageous stories in recent days, is when the word of the day, hydroxychloroquine, is constantly thrown out in the media. And of course, Trump touts it, says it's going to be the thing that cures COVID-19. And then when a couple in Arizona sees that they have fish tank cleaner, which has hydroxychloroquine phosphate, they think it's the exact same thing.
Don't tell me they took it.
Oh, they did.
Why?
Exactly. And it's like, some people were like saying, you don't understand. Yes, the name was similar, but it had phosphate at the end. And number 2, it was fish tank cleaner. There's a very big difference from drinking fish tank cleaner and taking a pill that has the same name that is actually prescribed to you by a doctor. There's a very big difference. It's like,
there are so many people not taking medical advice. They're taking advice from anchors and a president who tells you to maybe inject bleach into your veins.
It's like when the perfect metaphor is, doctor says red wine is good for your heart. Okay, I'm going to go upstairs to my bathroom cabinet and drink rubbing alcohol because there's alcohol in it.
Exactly. Which I'm sure has happened.
Oh, you know what? If it's happened to somebody I knew in life, I don't think I'd even be shocked. I think I would just be sad and depressed. Because I'm like, as Ron Weasley said in Chamber of Secrets, how thick can you get?
Exactly. Yeah, I had a really good point, and it was going to be really fantastic, and I totally just lost it.
Oh no! Too many kinds of thoughts are getting derailed today. It's gotta be the fact that we're all sheltering in place right now. It's destroying our brain cells.
At this point, I have one brain cell, and I can barely string together a sentence. There's so many times when I look at my roommates, and I'm like, you know, we can't speak anymore.
Oh my God!
What I was going to say, though, actually, was the idea of giving straightforward news while also keeping it entertaining, because I think it's such a hard thing to do. As a young person, even younger than I was now in high school, I didn't get interested in politics until I started watching things like The Daily Show and Stephen Colbert, because when you're, 16, a lot of times political news is not interesting. You know, I'm not going to look up tax law on my own, but if someone who's entertaining, talks about it with me, maybe I'll be more incentivized to do it. Whereas if I saw a straightforward news anchor do it, I'm probably not going to be that interested. So I think there's a right way to sort of strike a balance, but a lot of these news stations don't know how to balance it.
Well, I will tell you what's really getting the younger generations very much aware of news, especially understanding politics, is because of the fact that there's a platform called YouTube where average people who like to talk about these things get on and turn on a video camera and start talking about it. And that's the reason why I'm very happy about the fact that there are so many. Again, I never wanted to talk about politics when I was younger either, but because of the fact that there are so many outlets now, if you don't want to watch the news because you don't think you're getting the straight story, just turn it off. But you can go and listen to a podcast or watch a YouTube video where you're going to get people talking about these same exact things, but they're going to relate it to you better because of the fact that they can speak about it in a language and a format and dare I say it, a more entertaining way, because you don't necessarily have to have a filter on your videos. So you can be as conservative or as extreme as you want when you're talking about these things. And that's why the news has become such a different animal right now, because of all the different outlets that there are and so many new ways that younger people are connecting to it.
Exactly. I read this really interesting New York Times article about teenagers who were doing political TikToks, which was so interesting. They had like a Democrat house and a Republican house TikTok account, and a bunch of teens were uploading debates and all of these sort of funny little TikToks together, but they were on opposite sides of the political spectrum, and it was a way for them to not divert, what was I going to say? Debate and sort of educate each other. And it's so interesting how they use what most adults consider one of the silliest new social media platforms to have these honest and real conversations, even though they can't even vote.
Yeah, absolutely. But you know something? That's a very positive thing, because if a person who's younger, I mean, like I said to so many people, and regardless of where they felt politically, I've always said if there is one thing that the president has done for this country that is positive, is to actually made us all more politically aware. Like the fact that we actually know our Congress people and our House of Representatives members. Like, if you would have asked me that question, like, 4 years ago, I could have given you my senators, but I would not have known who the senator of Illinois was. But I do now, because of the fact that we constantly hear these names mentioned on a constant basis everywhere now. So that's important. And the fact that younger kids are debating politics and talking politics, that's a very positive thing, because regardless of whether we like to talk about it, we need to know about it.
Exactly. And I, like you said, non-news platforms are where a lot of people are going to get their politics now. I follow a lot of left-leaning political YouTube accounts because, one, there's no network that they're beholden to. Two, they can say whatever they want. And three, they're just more entertaining overall. There's a way that they can include humor and jokes, and they can use, like, I guess, sound bites differently. It's really entertaining.
Yeah.
Just a second. I'm going to close the blinds a bit because I'm getting this weird effect.
Okay, no problem. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, as you can clearly see, Taylor and I really love talking about this stuff together.
Okay, it's marginally better.
It's okay. I was actually telling everybody about how the two of us get along so well when we talk about these things. One of the things I was just about to say was the two of us actually became really, really good friends right after the 2016 election because we talked about it. And I insisted. Yeah, like I listen to a little bit more on the conservative end. I like to listen to, I just find Steven Crowder hilarious and funny because he's also a comedian at heart. That's really where he got his humble starts. I really like the fact that he does that little segment, even though there are some people that might find offenses in it, where he goes to college campuses and he puts like a statement out and he says, please, like, help me change my attitude. Like, let me switch my side. What'd you say?
Is that where the meme came from?
Yeah, it's like prove me wrong or something like that. But he's not trying to do that for the sake of triggering people. He really wants to try to encourage people to healthily debate about important political topics. I also love to watch everybody on the Daily Wire. I find Ben Shapiro great. I find Andrew Klavan hilarious. I like that Andrew Klavan starts every single broadcast with a faux news story. You got to know that he's just trying to be funny. He's not trying to be serious. And there's also Michael Knowles. I think that he could be a little bit hot under the collar. He could really rub some people the wrong way because he's very, very snarky. So I can understand where people can really not appreciate him. But again, these guys, they do the news. They talk mostly about politics and social commentary, and they're very, very unfiltered, and they try to rope in a little bit of comedy. Honestly, even when I watch the true news anchors on networks, I actually think that when it comes to Fox News, the only person who I truly appreciate is Tucker Carlson, because Tucker Carlson is a former CNN reporter. That's where he got his big break. But I appreciate the fact that he talks about the social commentary of the world, the social state. He brings people from the opposite side. He's brought a lot of Democratic representatives onto his show to talk. He's even brought celebrities like the great Richard Dreyfuss. I appreciated when he brought Richard Dreyfuss onto his channel, because what he wanted to talk about was the fact that he's a firm believer, Richard Dreyfuss that is, of bringing civics education back to the school system. He says that kids need to be more aware of civics, and that's great.
Yeah. I personally don't watch any of those people. I have my issues with Ben Shapiro personally.
That's completely fine.
Yeah. I think he's not that great a debater, but like I said, people can have different opinions. If you want, like, my left-leaning recommendation is Sarah Zed, 100%. College student, I think she's like a senior, incredibly intelligent. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And it's amazing that you have, like I said, young people who are getting interested in politics.
Yeah. And clearly we have, we're obviously, the discussion that we're having right now clearly shows you all what network pretty much shapes. Because I think that that's where the conversation will obviously go next in regards to the commentary that the film really gives us.
Yeah, exactly. It's really interesting. And like I said, it was one that grew on me. And part of it is probably I have an issue with 70s film pacing. It's so slow. But like thinking on it again and thinking on it over and over and over again and writing down my notes, like it really does bring to light a lot of interesting things about the media. And I think another thing that got me was, like I said, listening to the soundbite in a leftist podcast. I think that's so interesting that it speaks to both sides.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think what was one of the few things that really, shocked me when I was watching that film was the scene in the film where Howard Beale is called into the big boardroom to talk to the president of the network. And that scene, remember everybody, this movie comes out in 1976, and this corporate giant who is played by Ned Beatty. And if you don't know that name, I'm sure that you all know Lotso Huggin' Bear from Toy Story 3. Ned Beatty voiced him. So the fact that he is practically yelling at Howard Beale with like the power of the wrath of 1,000 suns, and he's basically telling him that it's not about the news anymore. It's about the money. It's like the countries of this world are, and he names corporations. Yeah. Who would have thought that in the early 1990s, corporations would buy these news networks, and they would actually say that our goal is to report the news, but also to get the ratings? Well, unfortunately, that is like oil and water. There is no way that you're going to find a happy medium between those two concepts. It's just not going to work. And that's why when news first started getting broadcast all the way through the 1960s, 70s, 80s, that was when the news was relevant. That was when the facts were given to you, not fiction, not opinions. I said this to Taylor when we were trying to put together the talking points, that you know that you've officially lost the facts the minute a talking head says, I think, or here's my opinion. That does not mean that that's the truth.
Exactly. And I think there's always going to be a place for opinions, but there has to be a sort of differentiation. You've got your news segments, and then maybe you have like a little other segment where you have debates and things that are more opinion based. But when you're trying to find news, I'll be right back. My computer has a low battery. I am so prepared. There we go. Sorry.
It's just the excitement of the conversation.
It got a little worn out. I remembered to grab my earrings and didn't remember to grab my charger. But I have no idea where I was, but
no, we were talking about the concepts of the fact that when these days it's not about the facts, it's about the opinions.
Right. Yeah, I think a lot of news segments or news shows don't understand that you can give the news in one, like they could split up the show between the first 30 minutes of my show, we give the facts, the news, and then maybe I can do a deeper dive for the next 30 minutes and give you what I think if you want it to be like political commentary or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, it's like one of the shows that's out there right now in the news, and if you're fans of it, everybody, I'm really, really sorry, but one of the shows that I cannot stand is Meet the Press, because I know that Meet the Press is going to be talking about political issues, but I also know that it's in the title, Meet the Press. The press has opinions. And the press is going to give you those opinions based on facts, though, most of the time based on facts, because that's what it really is. You know, you hear something, your mind absorbs it, and then you blurt out your own personal thoughts on it and then say, okay, everybody, what do you think about what I just said? But the only problem is it ends up becoming an ugly game of telephone at the end of the day, because if someone absorbs a fact and then gives out an opinion, and then someone absorbs the opinion, not the fact, and sends out another opinion. Basically, the fact is gone, and now it's just hearsay.
Yeah, I agree with that. And you can see a lot of it now with coronavirus reporting. How many people are going to beaches now? How many people are saying it's not that bad, you know, or only 100,000 people will die? You know, they're not based in fact, they're based in your opinion, and even so 100,000 people is still 100,000 people, but you know, it's just, you see it especially now, and it's incredibly frustrating, so much so that I cannot watch the news or read the news more than maybe once a day.
Yeah, exactly. And that's one of the few things that makes me very curious about network as a whole, because after the film ends, like, I'm always like saying to myself, well, what was actually going to happen to this station now? Like, what are they going to do? Like, did what happened to Howard Beale make them want to change? Or did it make them actually, or seriously, like, what was going on in Faye Dunaway's character's head? It's like, how can we top this? You know, that's the $1 million question at the end of the day when it comes to the movie.
Yeah, I think she kind of dug her own grave there, because what's going to beat an assassination?
Yeah, it's real. Yeah, I mean, that's what I love so much about that film, because I love movies that are very thought-provoking, and I also just love those movies that leave you not necessarily on a cliffhanger, but on an ending that still keeps you guessing, because clearly Network is a perfect film on its own. If there was ever someone that actually said we need a sequel to Network, I'm like, you must be joking. Seriously. There's no way that it's going to work. But
this does make me wonder if there's network fan fiction out there. What
you know what?
After?
If there is, let me know, and I would like to read some. I would love to see what people think about. But no, but at the same time, if there's a positive that could be taken away from network is I don't think we really saw much of it throughout the decades, maybe the 80s and the 90s, but I definitely feel that especially in the 2010s, we got a lot of movies that were based around the news. I mean, I think one of the big ones that came out in the 90s was The Paper. I believe that stars Robert Redford. But think about some of the great movies that we've gotten over the last couple of years. We've gotten movies like Spotlight, which is a fantastic film. We got The Post, which is also a great film. And yes, I know Meryl Streep is in it. I can't leave a live show with Taylor without talking about Meryl Streep. That's now officially a done deal. But I do appreciate her role in that film. But then again, I'll see anything with Tom Hanks in it. That's beside the point. But and also we got Richard Jewell last year, the Clint Eastwood film.
Right. Yeah.
And Bombshell, which was about the Roger Ailes story, which was one of my favorite films from 2019. It was so fantastic. And I even did watch the miniseries on Showtime about Roger Ailes starring Russell Crowe, The Loudest Voice. I like actually referencing The Loudest Voice and Bombshell side by side because The Loudest Voice was the exact same story, but taken from Roger Ailes' perspective, whereas Bombshell is the story taken from the women's perspective and the people around Roger Ailes. But then again, at the same time, Russell Crowe did a great job as Roger Ailes, and John Lithgow was stellar in Bombshell as well. But
he was really good. He made my skin crawl during that scene with Margot Robbie in his office.
Yeah.
Oh my! There were people gasping in the theater. Like, oh
yeah. But John Lithgow is one of my favorite actors. I love John Lithgow.
He's amazing.
And one of the few things that a lot of the entertainment networks, and even I believe when he was on Sunday Sit Down with Willie Geist on NBC, he actually asked him, were you nervous about taking this role because you're playing a true villain? And he said, it's not about the fact that I'm playing the villain. It's just the fact that, it's just like losing yourself in a role. That's what acting is all about. You want to take risks. You want to play the hero. You want to play the villain. You want the audience to love you. You want the audience to hate you. And it's like I always say, because one of the other things that I do know in regards to the last couple of years is that, everybody's strongly opinionated, and the same could be said about the celebrities out there. I found it so stupid that there were some people that were like saying, oh, I'm going to boycott this movie because this actor or this actress doesn't think the same way that I do. You have to separate the art from the artist. If you don't like the way the person acts outside when the camera's turned off, that's fine. But don't deprive yourself about possibly watching a fantastic film just because you have a vendetta against the person who's playing a character in said film.
See, I both agree and disagree with that sentiment because on one hand, I think you can never separate the art from the artist. As an aspiring artist, your work, your beliefs, your outlook on life, it's always going to leak into your art, especially if you're a writer or a director. You're always saying something about how you view the world. That's one of the beautiful things about art.
That's true.
On the other hand, as someone who likes a lot of controversial films or directors, it's always something you have to, I guess, sort of pick and choose. I love Rosemary's Baby. I think it's a fantastic film. Roman Polanski is garbage. Absolutely garbage. But on the other hand, I can't bring myself to watch a Woody Allen film. Just the thought of him leaves a bad taste in my mouth. And I think part of it is always going to be a bit hypocritical, but I think it's totally fine for people to make that decision for themselves.
You see, it's funny that you brought up Woody Allen because I don't like Woody Allen movies. I just don't get them. So the only movie that Woody Allen is a part of that I can actually tolerate is Ants. That's the closest you can get me to actually liking a movie with Woody Allen. But, I bring up, here's the example that I always use. Michael Jackson. Yeah, what he was like, regardless of whether it was fictional or true, I love his music. I think that his songs are wonderful. But when I take a look at some of the things that he's been accused of, sure, it leaves a bad taste in my mouth. It really, really does. But I'm not going to say I will never listen to a Michael Jackson song ever again just because he was the kind of person that he was. But at the same time, I see exactly where you're coming from in regards to the examples that you gave. And I'm sure that there are so many that will agree with you.
Yeah, it's one of those things that you have to walk a fine line, and that's where I always take the side of you can like something problematic, you just can't try to excuse it. Like, I love Gone with the Wind. It's one of my favorite films of all time.
It's a wonderful film, too.
It is. It's super racist, and people thought it was racist back in 1939. It's always been a racist film. So I wouldn't begrudge someone, especially a Black person, if they said, I won't watch Gone with the Wind. I will never watch Gone with the Wind, because I understand there's this really uncomfortable feeling when you're watching a scene with Mammy or Prissy. It's hard to watch sometimes.
Well, I'll give you another example. I mean, look, as someone who's part of the Jewish faith, I know so many Jewish people in this world that will never watch The Passion of the Christ.
Oh, that is a bad movie anyway.
Yeah, I mean, like, when it comes to Mel Gibson, there are some movies that he's behind that I do enjoy very much. I mean, I love Braveheart, and one of my wife's favorite movies that he's actually in is The Patriot. But that's also because of the fact that she's a U.S. history nut, and who the hell doesn't love Jason Isaacs as the villain? I mean, come on. But when it comes to his movies, there's a lot of his movies like Passion of the Christ, and I also heard that Apocalypto is also a hot mess. So I don't think I'll ever see those movies. Am I curious about them? Sure. I mean, the fact that I haven't seen Apocalypto is a shock to some people, because when I was a kid, I had such a passion for Mayan archaeology and Mayan artifacts and stuff like that in history. So the fact that I haven't seen that movie, but I'm like saying to myself, I don't want to see human sacrifices on movies. No, thank you. I don't want to see that.
Exactly. I think we're always going to draw a line somewhere, and it's not always going to make sense. So I think people have a right to boycott an artist because you have a right to, consume whatever media you so choose.
Yeah, but exactly.
I think there's always a way to go about it. And like I said, it's something that I struggle with as a film person, because so many things you watch are going to have issues with them, especially old movies.
Yeah, I think really what it is more about is if you choose not to separate the art from the artist and you choose to decide that you don't want to watch some other things, I think what it's really more about is if someone actually doesn't agree with you, don't look at them as 100% evil. Let them be entitled to being the free thinker that they are.
I agree with that. I think there are some views that you should definitely... Like, if someone was super conservative and they were just like, hey, Black people suck, I'm never going to watch something by them. It always depends on the point of view they have.
Well, obviously. Yeah. I mean, look, when someone's going to be that ignorant, but again, that's like hitting the nail right on the head there. It's obvious. I get that 100%. Like, I'm not, like, one of the few things that I do say to people is some people get really, really upset when I don't think that Black Panther is the best superhero film ever made. Do I like that movie? Oh, yeah, I do. I actually just rewatched it because I'm about to throw together a debate with a couple of friends discussing Black Panther and the DC film Aquaman. But I don't think that it's the best movie due to specific additional reasons in regards to the film making. I mean, what I specifically say about Black Panther is the actors that are in this film, what I really appreciated about it was these were actors that were already making great movies. I mean, I love Chadwick Boseman in 42, the Jackie Robinson story. As a baseball fan, that's a great movie. Harrison Ford as Branch Rickey, what a great choice. But also Lupita Nyong'o, she already had an Oscar for 12 Years a Slave, which is a brilliant movie, by the way. It's gruesome to watch sometimes. but it's a beautiful movie. It's one of those movies that people really need to see just to really get like the true history in regards to those really heavy hitting topics. And Steve McQueen holds nothing back. I appreciate that.
Did I tell you I watched that movie on my relaxing night in? I don't know why. I had a face mask, a glass of wine, a huge fluffy robe, and I'm like, I'm going to relax tonight. And I turned on 12 Years a Slave like an idiot.
You know what?
It's great.
Hey, look, if I want to relax one night and I want to watch John Wick, then you know what? It's the line, different strokes for different folks. Even a truly hard-hitting, dramatic movie can be somebody's way to discover their moment of zen, which is something that we all need.
It didn't relax me. It made me very sad. I was supposed to watch a rom-com, and then I was like, oh, I hear this is good.
Well, like I said, it's a fantastic film. Yeah, but the point that I'm making here is like, the fact that we finally got all of these great actors in a blockbuster film that was pretty much for all average moviegoers, because not every moviegoer goes to a movie specifically for like a drama. Some people just don't care for dramas, and especially a lot of Oscar-winning films. Some people just don't want to see it because it's just not their thing. Some people out there just want to see The Fast and the Furious, Some people just want to see an outrageous comedy. But the fact that Black Panther basically gave all of these actors a chance to finally be in a movie that a lot of people wanted to go see, that was my favorite thing, because the best part is they're getting more roles now. Like Lupita Nyong'o was in Us with Jordan Peele, and she was fantastic in that film. Very, very good.
Yeah, I heard that people wanted her to get an Oscar nomination for Us. I haven't seen it. I can't see it. It's too scary. But as someone who saw the movie, I don't think she should have gotten, and I don't think she really needed to get an Oscar nomination. I mean, I would say an MTV Movie Award. That's not bad because that's voted on by the fans. I think that if you actually get an award based on what the fans say, that says a lot more as far as I'm concerned. Mm-hmm.
But
opinions are always going to be different, and I think. And like I said, even my first stance, if an actor said, hey, Black people suck, I wouldn't watch them, isn't even always true. John Wayne had some horrible views, and I like his movies.
Yeah, so exactly.
Nothing is ever going to be perfect, clean cut. Oh, go ahead.
And I think that that's pretty much what Network really explains.
I was going to say that.
Okay, well, you see, this is why we do live shows, because we may be different in political opinions, but my goodness, are we in sync?
Exactly.
It's uncanny.
So, Steve, did you have any other points to make about Network, or?
The only point that I will make is if you've never seen it, you have to. It's one of those movies that you need to see before you die. I think it may even be in the second version of the AFI's top 100 films. If I'm not right, I am sorry.
You're correct. I have to check. I think it was preserved by the U.S. National Film Registry, so that's cool.
Yes.
And it's number 64th on the AFI list.
Yeah, this is just one of those movies. There is nothing else like it. And especially if you are someone like myself or Taylor here that does in fact get involved in current events, regardless of what current events they are, it's going to really impress you, this film. It really, really will. And like I said earlier, when you take a look at some of those recent films that were based around journalism, you're going to really see a lot of elements from Network in these films, which I think is very, very powerful. It really set the stage for a certain genre of films to be created later on in the history of filmmaking. And that's what makes a movie like Network so iconic.
Exactly. I definitely agree with everything you said, Steve. I think giving it a watch is definitely something I would recommend. And I think it's one of those films that you have to think on very closely and think about what you see when you watch the news.
Yeah, and if any of you who are watching, if you see it and you actually want to make a review, or if you want to talk about it in your monthly wrap-ups, well, first of all, please give Taylor a shout-out. Forget about me. Give Taylor a shout-out because this is her show. And let us know what you thought, because I want to talk to more people about this movie. I really do.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you so much, everyone, for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And of course, don't forget to subscribe to Steve's channel. I put the link down below like 2 seconds before we started our discussion. So please make sure you subscribe to him. He has a lot of great content out, and he posts a lot more frequently than I do. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you later.